Okay, take two. Alright, hi, my name is John. I am going to be streaming a game of How to Train Your Dungeon. How to Host the Dungeon by Tony Dowler, an artist and game designer who focuses on fantasy games primarily and role-playing games. This is a single-player game, kind of a bit more on the toy side than the game side, I'd say, where you use a set of rules to design a sort of procedurally generated dungeon in the traditional Dungeons & Dragons style. Along the way, you build an emergent story using the game's tools and your own decisions as the player that hopefully would make a cool backstory to a dungeon a group of adventurers might go in one day, or just a fun story that you've been able to tell for your own entertainment. Tony Dowler has given me permission to use the second edition rules. Anyone who's backing his Kickstarter, which I would recommend, his art is really fun, has access to the rules for the second edition playtest. I believe the $5 limited up. It's currently a bit away, so there's some rules that might be a little wonky, a little, we'll need to interpret them, but that's okay. This is a game where it is designed so the player can interpret however they want and tell the story that they want. So yeah, I hope you will enjoy it. I'm going to use some knowledge I have from the first edition to fill in the gaps. You can get the first edition on Tony Dowler's website, on DriveThruRPG. But I would recommend chipping into his Patreon and getting the second edition. You might as well, right? There's a lot of cool art that he provides as well. So with that, I'm going to start switching over to the game. I am not an artist, so this is a game about drawing, which is not one of my primary skills, but I will do my best to make an entertaining dungeon for you guys. It's definitely a no-pressure game for people who aren't artists like myself. There's no one to judge because it's solitaire. You can clean it up in Photoshop. You can use shapes. When I first started playing this game, I used a lot of clip art and stuff like that, but I'm going to try drawing everything this time. I am working in Photoshop. The rules are written for pen to paper, but I'm pretty comfortable drawing in Photoshop, so that's what we're doing. So to start off, we have a document, a blank page. For my own convenience, I have half-inch grid on. I have snap off. You don't want to have that. That would just make your drawing weird. And I set the 0 at about 1.5 inches down the side, because that gives us enough space to have the overworld if there's anything that happens on the surface in our game. The first step is to determine what our world looks like, how it came to be. The first stage of the game is called the Primordial Age. In the Primordial Age, we figure out the basic geography of our map and set some of the preconditions that our world will face. Like if it's rich in mineral ore, or poor in ore, or if it's filled with magma and water and other hazards. So I'm going to show you the book again. In the second edition, he's introduced this rule of strata. So the strata of your world help you randomize what is happening where. It's a pretty useful system. He has 6 possibilities of what the world's strata looks like. You can draw your own too. I generally like to draw my own, but I'm going to play raw, read as written in this as much as I can. I had my dice somewhere. we go. So to start off, we'll roll a 6-sided die and see what our world, the basic shape of it. Rolled a 4, so we are under a large mountain. The size of the dungeon is somewhat abstract, pretty large usually. This is not going to get you a perfect scale map that you can plop into a world builder, a world generator like a worldographer or something and make an entirely accurate map, but that's not really the point. So our baseline is at 0 here, right at, we need to draw up, start a little below the baseline, and peak peak. Make this peak extra high. And it slopes down. I think I've made this too far over, so let's just bump this over to the side, shall we? There we go. This is why I like doing it in Photoshop. So we'll just make a layer, its own layer, and call it ground. I use layers a lot when I use Photoshop. They're a very useful tool. You can edit things, change things, and as the game goes along, you can show your changes. And if you're fastidious about your laying, you can go back in time and forward in time by turning off and on layers. I don't know if I'm going to go that far. We'll see. Depends on how wild things get. So, I'm going to draw on the strata. So we have surface is layer 1. Layer 2. That's a terrible 2. There we go. 2, 1. 3. Draw this big chamber down here. That's number 8. Doop. Let's redraw that. Let's draw that strata better. Let's make this more space. There. There's no wrong way to do this, really, but you want your strata to all be of a pretty good size. They're going to fill up with stuff, after all. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So the strata are all oriented very vertically. We have a large upwelling below the surface of matter that's pushed up this mountain, this very large range of mountains, through some tectonic activity. Oop, I'm sorry, I forgot to turn off the capture. There we go. So, now you can see what I was doing. We'll call this layer strata. We will make it semi-transparent. We'll create a folder and call it the Primordial Age. This is where we'll do all of our, keep track of all of our stuff that we do in here. So one last detail that we come up with in the Primordial Age is where this world came from. There's a D10 table that Tony provides. You could make up your own explanations too, but his suggestions are pretty fun, I think. You roll a 10. I got a 6, so the world has always been and always will be. Why do you ask? Interesting. So that sort of points to certain permanence to this world, some sort of constant fate. I don't know what that will mean yet. We'll find out as we play. If you are joining us, feel free to pop into the chat and say hi. Hi. Like I said, I'm playing How to Host a Dungeon by Tony Dowler, which is a single-player game of dungeon building and emergent storytelling. I think every game master should try this game at least once, especially if you are in the fantasy milieu. It's just a really fun and interesting way to generate a world with narrative hooks that are beyond your control. So we have a number of features that are going to occur in our world, and the first strata, we select one of our strata to contain a nexus. A nexus is a powerful magical element. This is one of the engines of the fantasy of this. So we roll a 20-sided die. Got my 20. Oh, so a natural 20. Make up your own. I'm trying to show the rules as written, so I'm going to re-roll that one. This is a game where you could fudge the rolls and it doesn't matter too much. I wouldn't do it on combat later on, but on things like the world building, you can be creative. Oh, this is a cool one. Natural 1. The mother of monsters. Something horrible lives here. A dragon, the mother of monsters, a dire god, or something else. Pick a spot. So in the game, as written, as I mentioned in the beginning of the stream, is designed to be written on pen and paper. And you use beads, small dice, go stones, something like that. Go stones work really well. It uses black tokens to describe population, groups of monsters, or the strength of a really big monster, and white for treasures. So the mother of monsters is a big monster that starts with 3 strength and 2 treasures. She exists on strata number 6. You can pick them too. Actually, I want to pick it. Now that I think about it, I'm going to put her down at the bottom here. The mother of monsters dwells deep within the world. It always has been, it always will be, and she will always be there, waiting. Sure, a civilization that rises up afterwards may destroy her for the moment, but that's only her temporal form. Nexus. Do we want to give her a cave? Yeah, we'll give her a big old cave. That's a weird one. Alright, I'm gonna delete that. Big old cave. Takes up most of the strata. We'll draw some stalactites. Stalactites, or are they her teeth? Someone's messaging me on my phone. Oh. Hi. Yeah. Maybe it is her teeth. Maybe this is a giant mouth. Maybe whatever's in here isn't the mother of monsters, really, but one of her children. And let's create an item for that. Mother of monsters. What does the mother of monsters look like? I think. Let's see. So he has the I told you I'm not an artist. There. She's got her arms waving in the air. Her weird misshapen hands. Damage from beating at the walls for cave for thousands of years. She's wailing. She's trapped deep beneath the earth and is not happy about it. Tentacles, more like pseudopods. Her flesh is gray because she does not see the sun ever. Gonna just cheat a little, do this. Nope, wrong layer. Ook. Dial down the opacity on that gray. There we go. And we'll shade it a bit. Doesn't really matter that she's not a good drawing. Like I said, it's okay to not be good at drawing. Oops, she's got a gap somewhere. I forget to turn off the screen. Yep. Keep forgetting to turn off the rules. I'm sorry, guys. Alright, this weird twisted creature, mother of monsters, that lives deep beneath the earth. Let's label her. Let's call her... Let's just call her the mother of monsters. She doesn't need a name. She doesn't have a name. She doesn't speak. She only howls. The mother. She starts with 3 health. A cat is walking in front of the screen. Say hello, Calvin. And how many treasures did you start with? 3, 2. And now we draw a treasure chest. We're going to use this throughout the game. I'm just going to copy the treasure chest I made from a previous one, because there's not really any point. And oh, I moved it. There we go. So this is a civilization that I had made recently. Copy here. You'll note my document is called the Dwarf civilization. That is the civilization that I'm planning on using. I might change my mind, but Mother Monsters lives alone with her treasures. Cool. Alright, so now we have to start. Now we have an idea of what our world looks like. Oh, hi Tony. Thank you for letting me use your rules. Alright, so now we fill out the rest of our strata. So starting with number 1, we'll just go through. We roll a d6. That tells us what feature exists in that strata. And then we roll a d10 to see what that feature is. Roll 4. So on the top level, we have some water. Roll a d10. A large cave or underground lake should be around 4 beads in size. So like I said, in this game you measure things in practical measurements. So a bead is your go stone or whatever you're using. Distances are measured in fingers. Since I'm doing it digitally, a bead is about a ½ inch square, which is why I have my grid set to ½ inches. A finger is 2 or 3 inches. So we have a pretty big chunk of water, but since I'm rolling this for the top, we're going to make it a big lake. I'm going to tweak the rule a little bit. Interpret the rules a little bit. We'll call it Big Lake, because there's no one around to name it yet. Nice blue. So about 4 beads in size. That sort of fills up a nice chunk here, which means that this mountain here is actually a sort of a seawall, which is kind of interesting. Let's erase back down to the coastline. Nope, too far. The interesting thing about starting with the Mother of Monsters is that a lot of the starting positions don't have any monsters, or only a few monsters. The Mother of Monsters is huge as monsters go, so it'll be interesting to see how that directs the civilization that follows. Anything that winds up in that cave is going to be munched, but maybe eventually something will defeat her. We'll find out. We're gonna shade this lake a little bit, give it a little dimensionality. Very deep after all. I think most of the people that are going to watch this are probably know me, but well, I'll just give you a little bit of a quick how to do about myself. I am a currently unemployed writer, publisher, based in LA. I am a avid role player and currently game mastering for my group of friends. So I have been very interested in trying to find new ways to generate and tell stories. The next strata rolled a 1, so it contains some ore. A large, massive ore filling up about half the strata. Which is one reason I've been diving back into games like this, or experimenting with the star system creation mechanism from Stars Without Number and some things like that, just to sort of think of ways to tell stories that give the players freedom and that can evolve organically. So we have a huge mass of ore, metal ore. I just chose metal randomly. Let's call that iron. Let's just make a note that it is a big iron deposit. Gray, there we go. Iron. Oh. And it should be its own layer so that we can dig into it later, because other civilizations that come by eventually will dig it up. Go away. There we go. In number 3, we'll have a 2. So I've been interested in this organic thing because 2 is gems. I had this vague theory that it would be less work. Instead, the completionist in me came out, and I'm building elaborate systems and spreadsheets that randomize things, and it's a lot of fun, but it's getting me thinking a lot about game design and stuff like that. So I decided maybe I should try to start doing something with that knowledge. So in gems, I rolled a 2, so we have 2d4 bead-sized gemstone deposits scattered around the next strata. I rolled a 3 and a 2, so we have 5. Gems. Let's make rubies. Rubies are easy to do because they show up, which is a very useful thing for them to do. Let's do a dry media brush. We'll do something with a little, yeah, like that. No, that's an eraser brush. Womp womp. Oh, it's called Kyle's Eraser. I should have noticed that. Alright, let's make some gems. We'll just put them around pretty randomly. So you'll see that I'm making them roughly bead-sized. If I hold them up against the grid, I like to sort of squish them down. You don't want to make them too big. You don't have to stick to the bead size when you're drawing exactly, but it helps because everything is sort of built around that metric. So if you make it too big, you might accidentally be throwing off the way that this is supposed to flow and balance. Alright, our next strata, I rolled a 3, so that will have some caves. Specifically, it will have 1d6 plus 1 bead-sized caverns that are not connected. We'll have 5 caves. We'll just scatter them around. We have a pretty large strata. So these empty caves, essentially as things start moving around underground and tunneling, they'll find these empty caves, and they'll turn them into rooms or nests or whatever. They'll also create new ones as they move around. You'll see what I mean. But the naturally occurring caves are an interesting variable because they take the structure that you might be drawing for your dwarves or whatever and throw it out of whack. Our next layer, 4. So if you've played the first edition, this is both a more complicated and simplified version. The strata function really helps this have a natural distribution. It was more random in the first one, but you also have more stuff in this one, which is good and bad. It's mostly good. I really like the amount of stuff you can have. It just takes a little bit longer to set up, at least for someone who's a bit of a slow drawer. So we have in our next strata a underground river crossing the entire stratum, going off the map if possible. Our stratums are very vertical. Thinking. Not sure where this one would go, because if it's just a line across, that's not really cool. I'm just going to re-roll. It's okay. It's okay to re-roll. Sometimes the result is... I rolled a 2 again, so I'm going to go with an underground river. I'll stick with what it gives me in this case. Sometimes I re-roll just to give myself a possibility or a choice, and then it almost always is rolling. I so often roll the same number. It's a weird coincidence. Okay, so what if it's not a river? What if it's some underground fissure, just this deep rent in the earth where that's filled with water? I'll make this bottom smaller. And give it some tributaries and branches. Of course, Tony might be watching me and going, "Oh no, you have to follow the rules." But I think I'm within the spirit here. So the interesting thing about the underground river, and there's also a river of magma option, is that it's sort of a time bomb for the civilizations and monsters that wind up moving into your dungeon. At least how I like to play it is that this gets breached significantly. It starts to flow into wherever in a somewhat naturalistic way. If it's just cracking a little bit, then it's okay, but if it gets ruptured, then your monsters could drown. You know, rooms full of things could fill up with water. We'll just call this Blue Hole in honor of the real one, I guess. We rolled a 6, so our next strata is going to be a biome. I like these. It's a 7. One huge cavern filling almost the entire stratum with a biome in it. Big cave. So we'll draw because this is vertically oriented, we'll draw it in kind of a weird lumpy shape. That gives it some texture and some ground levels. It's not just a big tall column after all. And then we roll to see what biome it is. Roll a Z6. I did that the last time I played this. Ooh, alien. Cool. I don't know necessarily what that's going to look like. Alien biome. What's an alien biome have? Start with some purple. And a chunky charcoal brush. Make it really big. Oops, that's way too big. There we go. And add some color. These are the weird alien energies that are in play. And then we'll add some blue. And we'll make this just a normal brush. We'll make it small, because now we are going to fill it up with blue lines. What are these blue lines? They are whatever sort of living circuitry or mycelium or whatever alien connective tissue holds this whole thing together. And then we'll do some orange blobs. These orange blobs, what are they? They are these weird jiggly pods of alien matter that cling to the outside of those walls like egg sacs. They look kind of like spider eggs. Alright, so you got some weird stuff going on here. Delete everything outside the cave. There we go. You got an alien biome that looks like nothing you've ever seen before. So as you can see, it's very interpretive what you want things to look like. One strata left. 2. Oh, alright. So I just am looking here, and there's a roll for the surface. So, shouldn't have done that big lake then. I should have rolled on this, but we'll work with it. What did I roll? So for the next one, we got some more water. 2. I have an underground river. 9. 1d4 plus 1 bead-sized caves containing water and connected by tunnels or underground streams. We have 2 caves. Small wet caves. Let's put one here, and then we'll have one here. Water. Gonna merge this with blue hole when I'm done with it. so we have one layer for all of our water, just to make things easier later on. Bigger brush. There we go. It's not blue. So, water flows from above here, pours down here. Will this top one ever empty out? No. Magic. The world is and always has been. That was what we rolled for the origin story, so that's what we are going to stick with. This is a strange magical thing. Maybe the top one is constantly filling with water from some portal to the plane of water. Oops. There we go. Yeah, I like that. There's a portal to the plane of water on top and one on the bottom. It's like a giant cycle that water just sort of pours in. Let's just make this look a little prettier. We'll make this water light because this is a waterfall. We'll make this sort of give it a little splash. We'll draw our mysterious portal. What's going on? What did I do wrong? Oh. Forgot to change the brush. Text message. And we'll draw a little bit of water coming down like a shower. Cosmic shower. Here we go. No, we'll leave that water separate. Okay, so we have created our environment. We have 7 strata in the surface. I'm going to tweak the surface to match up with number 5 on the surface, a small body of water. With a different terrestrial biome on each side of it. So we will put a forest on this mountainside. That's cool anyways. That gives us more diversity up top, which is nice. We'll have this go a bit over the mountains. There we go. And now let's draw some foliage. Make the brush a little bigger for that.
Great job.
Mute my phone. There we go. Alright. So here's our world as it was and as it always will be in the Primordial Age. But Primordial Age is not forever. Something changes eventually. You have the dawn of civilization, the age of the dwarves. We have a world ripe for dwarves, ready for them to dig and find. There's a huge deposit of iron, there's gems, and there's that weird alien biome. Who knows if they'll be able to make anything happen of that. Yeah, Tony, there's a lot of water in this world. I hope the dwarves don't drown. But, you know, the dwarves tend to dig too deep in the end. So, the civilizations all follow a set of rules. You pick one. The recommended start is the dwarves. They're pretty straightforward. They dig, they mine, they reproduce. They dig, they mine, they reproduce. And along the way they build special chambers that are dwarven machinery or underground cities, and they create a lot of legendary treasures that they leave behind after they eventually pass on. And then every civilization ends in a cataclysm of some sort. What that cataclysm is affected by how it's reached. But essentially, once the population hits a certain threshold, it's going to happen one way or the other. There's no way to save your dwarves from their collapse, and you don't want to. This is not the dwarves that are alive, and when your adventurers are coming around, these are the dwarves that lived way in the past. The age of civilization is an age of a forgotten or a lost civilization. So first thing we're going to do is I'm going to draw a dwarf. Then we're going to need some dwarves. Alright. So dwarves are stocky fellas, and ladies, I'm sure. The ladies are probably equally stocky. They mine. They battle. That's a weird arm. There we go. They build. And they leave a lasting legacy on the world when they pass. Terrible shoe. Doesn't really matter that it's a kind of weird sloppy drawing because it's going to take up only a little bit of space on our map. The dwarves wear armor, but we'll draw his head first. Can't forget his head. No, we'll draw the armor first because that way the beard can go over it. Big shoulder pads. Big blocky dome. They wear helmets, of course. They're miners after all. Their helmets are lit by a mysterious glowing yellow crystal that allows them to see ahead of them. No, not that color. armor. Steel. Iron, I should say. They have access to iron. Probably, if they get there. We'll give it some gold accents. We're going to be looking at these guys for a bit, so it helps to have a drawing you're okay with. Oh, oops. No. I switched to Windows recently, and I'm still getting used to some of the things. There we go. Of course they got gold pants. Gotta have a beard. Give him a little pickaxe. Alright, so we have our first dwarf. Where does he live? Let's find out. So, dwarves enter the map from the side. Pick a spot on either side of a map near a source of mineable ore. If no such source exists, pick a random spot. So the dwarves come in from the side. Okay, so they come in from under the sea. Dwarf tunnels. We'll create a layer for them. Dwarf tunnels are going to be fairly rigid, so we will try and draw straight lines. More or less. Straight-ish. We'll draw our first dwarf space. So what happens when the dwarves spawn? Draw a dwarf tunnel entering from the side of the map, leading to your chosen founding location and ending in 4 bead-sized rooms. In 2 of these rooms, place a dwarf these are dormitories. In each of the other two, place a treasure. Okay, so it's just near the treasure. Alright, let's start that a little further down then, shall we? That way the dwarves can mine up to the resources. The dwarf constructions are pretty tightly packed. This is their first city in this area after all, and they know exactly what they're doing. They are dwarves. They are proud builders. They have plans. Their plans will change. But their starting one is a nice, reliable construction. So these are the dwarven dormitories. Let's put some dwarf beds. Yeah, I have an idea. One dwarf unit does not represent one dwarf necessarily. Some of the monsters, yeah, some of the monsters 1-to-1, but your dwarf civilization isn't gonna be 8 guys. It's gonna be hundreds. So the dwarves sleep in dormitories with bunk beds. 3 dwarves to a bed. They're an industrious group. Fine with hot swapping bunks. They're here to work. Copy our little bunk bed. Move it over to the dormitory. And let's go get our dwarf. He's just a little guy. It helps to have strong colors and a distinctive shape. So that is one tip to you when you draw your guys. If you are not an artist, you may be tempted to stick figure them. I would not recommend that. Stick figures are hard to tell apart at a glance. Give them some color. It doesn't matter if they're good. You're not getting graded. Your players never have to see this if you're a game master. And if you do, you can explain it in World. That's the joy of game mastering. And they have 2 treasure chests to start with. You could go through and draw the treasures different for everybody. I'm sure an ambitious artist would. I just use the treasure chest because these things move around. Alright. The Dwarven civilization has begun. Once we've started them, they follow a life cycle. Here, I'll show you what it looks like. So this is the playtest version for version 2. The dwarves may look relatively familiar if you played the first edition. They have been changed, but not fundamentally. They still expand and exploit resources and ultimately doom themselves through their hubris or through an industrial accident or through a war. In this version, every turn of your civilization follows a life cycle. You do a number of steps in order. Some of them are either ors, if thens. Sometimes you have to use your judgment as to which if then you're doing. The dwarves expand, they add a dwarf. Generally speaking, when you add a new member of a civilization, you draw a room for them or put them in a room that's empty. So if they dig over to where those little caves are, they won't need to build rooms, they can just hang out. Exploit, you dig out a section of the map where there was ore or gems or something like that, and they convert that to treasure. If there are no resources to exploit, they will explore, they will dig tunnels, questing out. Then you build one of the dwarf constructions. If the dwarfs are population is 10 or more at the end of their turn, the dwarf civilization ends. What happens depends on what they've built. So let's start turn 1. So the first thing the dwarves do is they make room. They've not been here very long. This probably isn't even, babies or anything. This is just the dwarves who were following the first builders. You know what I did forget to do? I forgot to name them. You don't have to name everything. It just makes it more fun. It's like naming your Pokemon. You want to do it. It gives them an identity. It lets you start thinking about them as more, and these are my dwarves. Let's call them... Castlear's fine. Let's just go real traditional. The Golden Beard Clan. All right. Wait a second. What did I do? Okay. So we've built our new space for our new dwarves. We exploit some resources. I think it is perfectly reasonable that dwarves would know where resources are. We're really close to some iron. We're really close to some rubies. We'll just dig straight into those. You can see the rubies are kind of poking through the floor here. So I think they would probably go for those first. Move their attack here. Alright, so the dwarves have built their first gem mine. They hollow it out. They just clear it out right away. Hold on, better idea. There we go. And they replace that with a treasure chest, because that's what dwarves do when they exploit resources. That's what most things do when they exploit resources. Alright. So, we've expanded, we've exploited, we've built. So, the dwarves have... I did it again. So the dwarves have this track that they build on. And you can see that you could, when I was showing that a moment ago, you can see that there's choices. When you build, you count the dwarves' population. The black beads, if you're playing as written. That's your population. Choose a construct that requires that population or lower. Once you've built a power plant or a smelter, you can branch off into separate things. So we can build a tomb, or we can build workshops. The dwarves have just started their civilization. I don't think there's been enough time for dwarves to die yet, so they are building their workshops. So in the first edition of the game, I believe it defined the workshops as a cluster of oddly shaped rooms, geometric shapes. I like that idea. We are seeing the world from the side after all. So let's build going down from here. Hi, Pepsi Gal. Glad you can make it. I'm gonna build a little cluster of rooms. We'll build a branching path here. And we'll build some anvil. It's a big hammer thing attached to some machines. Big bellow. Stoking a fire. Just fill this with some interesting stuff. Big spiky wheel. And let's make this put a little heat there. There you go. Dwarven Workshop. So, we have built, we have expanded, we have exploited, we have built. Our population is not big enough. We repeat. We expand. create a home for some of the master craftsmen. Well, maybe not the master craftsmen, the junior craftsmen. They get to sleep in the cave. Why keep everything on layers? It makes it really easy to find things. I mean, you can just write it on one layer too, but nothing wrong with being a little thorough, as long as it's not making it not fun for you. Bed. Give them a floor. They build a floor. They're dwarves. They know what they're doing. Yeah, this is where the master craftsman lives. He's got a nice little breakfast nook. The tankard of beer. Oops, oops, oops. What happened? What did I do? Windows. There we go. All right. So we built. Well, mine. Alright, I was painting over the other ones. I want to keep painting over it, just so I can go back in time afterwards and show what it looked like. Alright, so the dwarves have a population of 4, so they get to build either a drinking hall or a trophy hall. A drinking hall has a fortification. That is a spot that, if there are any fighting in that location, the defender has an advantage. So interesting down the line. I like that it's a drinking hall is the fortification, or trophy hall, which has an epic treasure. That's something that stays put. Normally treasures go away at the end of the course of the civilization, but epic treasures stay. I always kind of like to throw in some epic treasures if I can, so I am going to do that. Dwarven treasure hall. It needs to be a little bit more sizable than their basic room. So what is the Dwarven treasure? Let's make it crown. Crown's an easy one. Crown's one that can stay and share around. Obviously, it has a big old ruby in it. The first ruby the dwarves ever mined. Put that on its own layer. Call it the crown of the gold ears. And we'll shrink it down to the size that everything else is. It's a big crown. Not to scale. Alright. So, we've done our pattern. We build again. Womp womp. That's from a different age. So. Give this dwarf a bookcase. This is one of the extended family of the Master Craftsmen. They get their own cool little pad. The Master Craftsmen work hard so that children can be scholars or artists or what have you. Alright, we've built, we'll mine. So, you can see that depending on how you pack your rooms, you could potentially mine all of this ore, but that's not really in the spirit of the thing. You are trying to create a space. And in creating that space, it needs to have some realism to it. It can't just be, within reason, it can't just be perfectly mined. It has to have little halls, it has to have rooms. It has to, the more it feels like something, the more interesting it becomes. That was a mistake I made in one of my first games, is I just sort of min-maxed it, and it was just kind of weird. It was a really crowded map. Alright, dwarves have built, dwarves have mined. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 dwarves, which means we have a choice. You can build we build a power plant or a smelter. The power plant leads us towards fancier technology. The other direction moves us towards conflict. interestingly, for the smelter, they can ultimately explore biomes as well. Industry or craft? Industry or craft? Let's build a power plant. What is a dwarf power plant? It is a mysterious artifact that draws power from magic. Don't know exactly what. Doesn't really... Oh, thanks for stopping by, Tony. That's cool. I'm glad he was able to come by. I've been enjoying this edition of the game. Oh, you know what? You know what this power plant is? This power plant is an artifact from the aliens that made it its way, that was scattered somewhere else. It is an ancient, mysterious meteor that the dwarves can draw power from. Alright. So... Up to 6 dwarves. The dwarves mine some more iron. Duplicate. This dwarven civilization is becoming pretty wealthy. Too bad I won't save them. So we have 6 dwarves. Let's build that underground highway off of the power plant. The underground highway, draw a tunnel leading off the page to the left or the right. We already have a tunnel leading off the left, so let's lead off the right. Big tunnel. What are these? What are these little... There's little artifacts on my... Hold on one sec. Okay, something in the dwarves. Apparently there's a little line on my dwarves. Delete. I could leave this and make something out of it. There we go. Sorry about that. I'm going to make that dwarven highway now. I need to stop doing that. So in this stream, I'm going to go through the age of civilization and stop. So the age of monsters will have to happen at another time. So, the Dwarven Highway is long. It goes through the blue hole, and it goes through the alien biosphere. But, you know, I think in this case, we're dealing with dwarves here. They're pro enough. They can find a way. They build a bridge over there, but first they need to build a big archway. No, let's just, I got a better way of doing this. how do they deal with this? They're their prime. I have been studying that alien artifact after all. So. They build a weird device that moves the water, teleports it down to where it's safe. Maybe some dwarf explorers already made it out all the way. Maybe not, but we'll see. Something goes wrong with that, though. They're going to be in trouble. Sorry, my phone is being difficult. Alright. Yeah, we got a dwarf who builds their home all the way over here. Why? Because somebody's got to watch this end of the road. We have a weird loner dwarf all the way down at the end. The dwarves have mined a lot of iron. Suspecting that there's another source of rubies. Travel inland from their dormitory. So as you may have noticed, I am painting white on here to cover it up instead of erasing anything. Personally, I try to avoid destructive editing when I'm doing anything really on Photoshop. It can result in very large files, but you know, I paid extra for a big hard drive. You might not want to be so over the top, and if you're going to use this document for anything, you'll probably want to simplify it in the end. Alright, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 dwarves. They built an underground highway. They have built. They could build a manufactory. No, I'm gonna go step back a second. On 6 on the central track, they can build a city. So they're gonna do that. The gold beards have grown quite large, and they need a home. So a dwarf city is a large chamber. Specifically, okay, so this foundation is a city. Give it a name, add a landmark, library, throne, statue, monolith, basilica, or pillar. So we're going to give them a big old room here in the center. Sorry, in the previous edition, the dwarf city, I believe, was a separate room, but, you know, this is fine too. It works just fine. This is where the dwarven throne sits, then. Let's make some more orangey gold. There we go. And we'll draw a dude sitting on it. Or dudette. Probably a statue, honestly. It's probably not an actual dwarf king. Alright, so the dwarves have a throne room. And they start another turn. As you might notice, this section can take a little while depending on what you're doing and how much you're drawing. I don't know if the rules are going to be streamlined in the next edition or not, yeah, but this isn't just a game you can really plop down and bang one out unless you're a really fast artist who knows the rules really well. But it's really easy to just drop in and play for a little bit too, so where does this dwarf want to live? I'm gonna roll. So 1 is down by the workshops, 2 is the center part of the town, 3 is the throne room, 4 is sort of middle of the highway, 5 is another structure around the highway, 6 is down below the throne room. 5 is over here. Okay. What did the dwarves do with all these treasures, you might be wondering? Well, that's kind of up to you to decide. But in the rules, treasure comes into play a lot if there's a monster or something like that. I'm kind of hoping that the rules account, the eventual next or final edition of the rules accounts for what treasure does for the dwarves a little more. Otherwise, it's just there. It's okay, but I feel like it could be more dynamic what they could do with the treasure. Like, I don't know, it's hard to think of a way to do it that wouldn't also make the building more complicated. Anyways, there are now 8 dwarfs. They could build a furnace that allows them to exploit biomes. Ooh, I like that. Then they can start exploring the alien stuff. And that is going to cause, that might play into their eventual collapse. We'll see. So it should be built over here. This is the biome they have access to after all. So we'll make a big lumpy thing for the furnace. Big yellow and reddish orange mouth. Let's make that line bigger. 10 pixel line. This is the exhaust, and the exhaust goes outside. For all the dwarves know the surface is there, they just aren't particularly interested in what it has to offer. Alright, so the dwarves have built themselves a furnace capable of converting biological matter into useful materials. I think I feel like this area is in the middle here is empty, so let's put another dormitory in here. Something near the throne room. Forgot to turn the hardness and opacity back. Big ol' 4-poster bed. Because the more posts your bed has, the bigger the posts your bed has, the fancier it is. But now that I say it, I like the idea of the more posts. A gold awning. So, you know, before maybe the Dwarf King was a working soul. Like, he doesn't wear his crown, he keeps it in the trophy room. But now the dwarves have grown big enough, they have a full-time king. So we're going to go zoom in on this guy. Give him a crown. This is the wearing around version of the Dwarf King's crown. Dwarf King, we'll call him. Doesn't really matter. Doesn't act any different, but it's kind of, I like including some details here and there. If your civilization is a smaller one, for example, it can be a lot of fun to name the folks, like, especially if they do something weird. Like the magicians get kind of, they do some odd stuff. And later on in the game, when monsters spawn, you can have some cool coincidences where a monster spawns on a location where a significant member of your race, of your civilization once lived. So maybe some undead monster will spawn where the Dwarf King was. We'll see. So, the big cave, we've erased part of the big, oh, did the thing that I was saying I wasn't doing. I've been pretty inconsistent about that. So we'll erase a chunk of this biome as they exploit it. But it's a big cave. Like, how are they doing this? So, let's design these dwarves. I guess platforms. Work platforms. Hanging from the ceiling. Like a scaffolding. Not like a scaffolding, that's literally the word for it. Let's make these outer bits angled. There we go. So the dwarves have built these scaffoldings that descend into the alien biome that allow them to just sort of haul up the stuff, whatever it is, that they scrape off, and then they process it in the foundry. So this treasure should really be in the foundry. Or, you know what? Because we can, there's nothing that says we can't build another room. I gotta store this weird alien stuff somewhere. Alright. And we have 9 dwarfs, so since nobody's reached the mother and gotten eaten, this will be the last time for the dwarves to do their thing, probably. Trying to see which dwarf was which. Dwarf 10 takes up residence here. The dwarves yeah, that's what they do. The dwarves lower their scaffolding. So we get down here, there's some stairs, and they build some platforms. They've built some platforms. There we go. You don't always have to draw stairs and stuff like that. There's not really much point in it often, but sometimes it makes something seem more interesting. Alright, so the dwarves have mined. They need to build another treasure chamber. Duplicate 12. Alright. So these behold the dwarves at the height of their civilization. They're about to go too far. So, when the dwarf civilization when the dwarf population is 10 or more, their civilization ends. When the dwarf civilization ends, remove all dwarf population tokens and treasure tokens except for epic treasures. Proceed to the Age of Monsters. So I'm going to do something. So the dwarves have an option under industry called an impossible engine, and then you take a free build action. So I'm going to have them build that impossible engine right before that is their final act. That is the thing that is going to tell the story of their demise. They've been messing around with this alien stuff. I told them this would spell their demise. Let's see, what else does this impossible engine need? Well, it needs to glow. So, go find a nice purple. Go dial down the hardness, size of the brush, opacity. Alright, so the dwarves have built this thing, this perpetual motion machine, or whatever it is. Alright, so the dwarves build the impossible engine. That lets them take another move action. Since they have 10 population, I have a choice. I can build them an Imperial throne room or a Doom weapon that adds an epic treasure, and then they'll just sort of limp away, or I can go for a big ending. The Dwarf War, draw a great battlefield, they delve too deep, draw a shaft off the bottom of the page, or an industrial accident. I mean, obviously it's an industrial accident. They're messing around with alien stuff. So. The accident. So, just gonna tidy things up a little bit. Alright, so let's turn off the dwarves and the treasures for now. Well, forever. Bye, guys. What's the accident? Let's hit that purple color that we used before for the alien artifact. And something happens. The weird arcane energies spiral through the dwarven ruin, through the dwarven civilization, destroying things that they come in contact with, freezing them almost in time. Machines stop working. Food becomes inedible. Beer stops brewing. The dwarves can no longer live here. Those that aren't killed in this burst of power, of weird out energy, evacuate. Who knows if this will be safe for habitation in the future? But it is certainly no longer the civilization of the dwarves. In the process, the thing that kept the water cycling the way it was supposed to fails. After all, it was powered by the power plant, which, let's show, is now not working by drawing a bunch of angry squiggles around it. I mean, the blue hole's still the blue hole. Still travels down. There's still water coming down there. But this underground highway partially floods. flooding. Let's make this a lighter colored water, or that blue-gray. Zoom in. The scaffolding breaks. Why would it break that way? There we go. All right. Let's see what we ended up with. All right. Thank you for joining me for this. Today, we saw the rise and fall of the Dwarven civilization. We went from a world that was static. It always is, as it always will be. Hey. Yep, I did cover up some things. Whoopsie doodles. That's okay. Number of caves inhabited by the mother of monsters, who remains undisturbed. And the dwarves came in, and they began to build. First, a small collection of tunnels, a collection of chambers that grew and grew and grew and grew until they began to spread out across this entire section of the underground, until they finally met their own caused their own demise in building the impossible engine. Their death came quickly for some, and others were forced to evacuate. Their furnace no longer burns. I should delete that. Or does it? No, it's not connected to like a magma or anything like that. Okay. So, our dwarves lived, they died, and soon they will be replaced. Because next up comes the Age of Monsters, which we will play soon. So watch this space. Most of you know me on Facebook. I still got to figure out how to do some stuff on Twitch, but I hope you had fun. Leave comments or whatever. This video should be archived and be up for a while. And let me know what you think. Thanks for hosting a dungeon with me. Good night.